Clerk Segris, please call the roll.
Trustee Anthony.
Present.
Foster.
Good evening.
Graham Hudek.
Good evening.
Let the record reflect the clerk Segris in attendance. Treasurer Slavens.
Good evening.
Trustee Snyderman. Looks like not here yet. And Supervisor Williams.
Good evening. Call for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion as presented, please state aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have two items on the agenda tonight. First up is a juvenile diversion program overview, as well, and the second item, Canton Public Safety Department's 5-year strategic plan and annual update. Josh, turn it over to you. Director Meyer.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, Board. Tonight is an opportunity for the Public Safety Department to kind of, number one, we want to talk about the diversion pilot program that we initiated back on September 1 and give the Board kind of an overview. I'm excited to see what transitions over the next year and the results of this, and whether or not, we can make an impact within the youth of our community in a positive way. And the second item will be an update of our strategic plan. If the Board recalls, about a year ago this time, the Board approved our 5-year plan, and so we've made some tremendous progress in the last year, and I think it's really reflective of the leadership team that we have in place here in the Public Safety Department. So I want to start by introducing the team here tonight, and then I'm going to turn it over to the sergeant to talk about diversion. So I have Sergeant Adam Schulman. He's our investigative sergeant, and he's also the diversion program coordinator. And so his role is really to manage the program, and so he's the one that's taking phone calls all hours of the day and night, and he's doing a fantastic job. So he'll present on that tonight. I have Deputy Chief Craig Wilshire from the Police Department. Deputy Chief Wilshire was instrumental in our strategic plan, and he's also our CLIA accreditation manager. So our strategic plan plays a large role in accreditation and the process, and so he's been a great asset there. And then I have Deputy Director Chad Baugh. Deputy Director Baugh is doing, again, a fantastic job of managing the day-to-day operations of the police department. And really, the two deputy directors really I kind of lean on for the development of this plan. And then the document that we handed out tonight, which is really our report card at the end of the day. And I'll walk you through that after we do the diversion. I got Deputy Director Stockline from the Fire Department and Deputy Chief Jamie Strasner. Deputy Chief Strasner is our accreditation manager on the fire side, and these two, for the last several months, have been buried in accreditation because we have our on-site occurring next week. So this is an incredibly exciting time for the fire department. We'll talk about the accreditation, the process that goes through, but the accreditation in general, both on police and fire, I think has really enhanced both sides of the house, both police and fire. We've been able to accomplish things that if we weren't following the accreditation model, quite frankly, we may not have been doing. So things like the 5-year strategic plan, our report cards, our data collection, on the fire side, doing a community risk assessment, really evaluating every corner of our township, and all of that plays a role in the success of our departments. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Barb Caruso, who is working on the computer back there. Barb is my administrative assistant and really the go-to in public safety. She does quite a bit. The plan, this plan really came together because of the work of Barb and Denise up in my administrative offices. They put a lot of hours into putting this document together, and it's a document that I'm very proud of that we accomplished. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Schulman, who's going to walk you through diversion, because I think he's got somewhere he needs to be tonight.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Township Supervisor and board members for having me here to do this. Like the Director said, I am the program manager for the diversion program that's currently in place. It is a pilot program that began on September 1st of this year. It's going to run for the course of a year, and at the 6-month mark, we will be reviewing it by an oversight committee to see where we're at, and then obviously at the 12-month mark will be the final review to see how well we're doing in it, and then if we will continue it. The reason for the program, it is twofold. The first being that with a juvenile entering into the program, it provides them with an opportunity to keep a possible citation or a misdemeanor off of their record if they complete the program successfully. And second, with this program, it allows for services to begin with the juvenile as soon as possible. They have to contact GrowthWorks, who is our partner in this, by the next business day. If they don't, GrowthWorks reaches out to them. So it's a quicker process for them to begin the services to try to put them on the straight road. The presentation that I'm going to show you guys will just offer some insight and a breakdown currently of our statistics, or juvenile statistics from 2016 to 2018, and then also some highlights from Act 13 of 1988, which is the Juvenile Diversion Act, which provides us the authority to create the program that we created in conjunction with GrowthWorks and with the assistance of the Wayne County Prosecutor's Juvenile Division. So the first slide is just our 2016 to 2018, just arrest offense categories for juveniles. Juveniles in the state of Michigan are under 17. 17 currently makes them an adult by law, so they would fall into a different category. The governor did just sign a law that in 2021 that's going to change to 18. So when that is effective by the legislature, we will revamp our policy and our program, and then it'll be 18, so then it'll be 17 and under. Currently, the top 3 offenses from the last 3 years were drugs and alcohol, assaults, and larceny, with an increase in juvenile possession of tobacco, nicotine, and/or vape products. And that a lot of the nicotine and vape products comes from the park, comes from the educational park, the 3 high schools. With 6,000 kids, it's bound to happen. Let me go back to this real quick. There's also, it breaks down to the misdemeanors are the most common that we deal with, but it also breaks it down into the felonies. At the bottom, you see the lower numbers where we do have your robberies, weapon offenses, intimidation, arson. CSC stands for criminal sexual conduct.
Adam, if I may jump in just for a second, if we can go back one slide and talk about the tobacco, nicotine, and vaping. I don't think I'm telling the board anything new. It's on the news. The vaping is on an increase. It's on a rise. It's in our high schools. It's in our middle schools. And the school policy, by and large, now is if they catch a student with a vape, it's not only school consequences, but they're calling our school resource officers. And historically, prior to September 1st, we would issue a citation, and that there would be consequences through the court for that juvenile offender. Now we have some other opportunities through Diversion and GrowthWorks to get them into a vaping 101, try to educate them as to the harmfulness of these products. And so you can see a drastic jump between 2016, 2017, and 2018. And I think you'll see probably another increase in 2019 just as a result of that, taking that enforcement action and now doing that and addressing it in a different manner. So I just wanted to touch on that.
So this is a breakdown of those top 3 offenses that were just listed, with 75% of the offenses being drug and alcohol, possession of marijuana, paraphernalia, and also marijuana is now a civil infraction once the law changed to recreational marijuana. The assaults that we mainly see, 72% of the assaults are domestic assaults, so the fights at home, fights with mom and dad, fights with brother and sister, or somebody that resides there. And then also the larcenies that we see, or 63% of them, are retail frauds, so stealing from Walmart, Kohl's, Sam's Club, things of that nature. We still do have other, as you can see, there are other offenses that juveniles do commit. These are just the most common that we tend to see on a regular basis. In terms of the stats for the past 3 years, like I've been saying, 90% of what we have dealt with and the officers have dealt with is misdemeanors, and only 10% is felonies. So a very low number in terms of felonies for the juveniles that reside in Canton and pass through Canton. It's mainly the misdemeanor stuff. This is a breakdown of the felonies at 10%. The 3 most common are UTA, which is auto theft, fraud, and larceny. With larceny, it depends on the value as to what will make it a felony. Anything over $1,000 is going to make it a felony, or just larceny a building in and of itself, no matter what you take, is a felony. So that's where those would be coming from. And then we do have a couple robberies, a couple burglaries, and then the intimidation, threat to bomb is highlighted there. Those are the threats to the schools. threats to public buildings, things of that nature, which as an investigative bureau, we vet fully to make sure that everybody is safe and can go to school and go to work. So in regards to the act, the Juvenile Diversion Act of Act 13 of 1988, this is what gives us the ability to create the program that we currently have in place. We also, with the guidance of this and the assistance of current Chief Heinbach from the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office Juvenile Division, was a great help in creating this program with Deputy Director Baugh to make sure that we were within the law, to make sure that we do things properly and accurately. So I know that's a lot of words up there, but it basically says that this gives us the authority to create the program that we currently have in conjunction with the private organization or agency that will assist the minor's family in resolving the problem. That's the main goal, is to let's offer services to the juvenile that they may not have had a chance in the past. So now we have this program, and the private organization that we partner with is GrowthWorks right here in Canton. And they've been fantastic since we've started. So this is for part of that act as well, the decision made to divert a minor. All the factors need to be examined. So we take into account the alleged offense, we take into account their age, obviously, like I stated before, it's under 17, the nature of the problem that led to the offense, the minor's character, conduct, behavior in school, family, groups, friends. We take a lot of different factors into account to make sure that we make appropriate decisions, because who knows what is actually causing this juvenile to have the problem they're having or act out. And maybe in the past they weren't offered a program like this because we didn't have this till September 1st. Everything else was through the court system. So this is one way to help them. So this is also from that act, but this is what our policy currently states and what guides our officers and command officers to make the decisions in terms of the offenses that qualify for the program. Status offenses such as possession of marijuana, alcohol, that'd be your vapes, tobacco, simple assaults, disorderly conduct, communicating threats, trespassing. 6 and 9 go together with the curfew violations because that could be part of an undisciplined juvenile. If we have someone who's continually disobeying at home, causing disruption in the school setting, not going to school, this program can be offered to them as well. They don't have to commit a crime per se to get into the program. The program does have a facet to it that will allow them to hopefully learn to make right decisions. Larcenies and the damage to property. This list it's set right now. It's kind of evolving as we do this if we come across something different. Myself, as the program manager, I have the right to override this list. And it's happened before where the school resource officers have called me and we take into account something different, and if it's not on the list, I said, all right, well, let's offer it to them. Who knows if this will be the turning point in their life that will get them to the right path. However, on the other side of it, there are automatic disqualifiers that we have to abide by. A prior arrest history, if the case is a felony case, we can't divert them. That has to go to the prosecutor. They're the only ones that can make that decision. If they live outside Wayne County, we can't offer it to them because this is a Wayne County-based program with GrowthWorks being based in Wayne County. If the victim makes a request for restitution to be paid or they want to seek prosecution, we have no authority to make a child or their family pay back anything that they've damaged or stolen, and we obviously are not the prosecuting, charging officials. We're just merely the fact finders, and we present it to the appropriate people. And then the big thing is that the parent or guardian of the offender refuses juvenile offenders' participation in the program. They have to be on board, which I'll expound on at the end here in my last slide as to why they have to be. But we've only run into a couple instances where the parents say, no, we don't want any part of it. So this is a flow chart that was created by actually our crime analyst, Megan Stevenson, and she made this for patrol so they can have it in their bags, have it in their cars. It's currently posted in the report writing room. It's also on our shared drive that we have among the police department. So anytime somebody has a question, they can pull that up, follow the flow chart, yes, no, and it'll lead you to the appropriate decision. And then if there's still a question, that's where I get the phone calls, like the director said, at all hours of the day. So currently, to date, as of 11/26 of 2019, so just before the holiday, there have been 50 juveniles that were considered for the program. Of those 50, 26 of them, 52%, met the qualifications for the program, and 24, 48% were not qualified. And they were not qualified for either living outside of Wayne County, a felony arrest, domestic violence. We also don't have any leeway on currently. That's something that has to go to the prosecutor for review. And then if the victim wanted to prosecute or wants restitution, that's where the 48% would come from. So in terms of GrowthWorks, this is just a quick overview of what is explained to the parent when we offer them the program, so they know what they're looking at, what's in the future. Currently, there's two different groups. There's a life skills group, which is out of their Plymouth office, and the substance abuse group, which is out of the Canton office. The life skills course is about 10 to 12 weeks. The substance abuse, we can't really put a number on. This is what the coordinators told me, just based on, we don't know what their addiction is and how quickly we can help them, how much guidance they're gonna need, how much support they're gonna need to get off of it. So that's something that there's no set time frame on. We just let it run its course, and when they hopefully complete it successfully, then there's no charges or anything from our end. Currently, they have two different types of session. The regular session is 2 days a week. The intensive session is 3 days a week. It's all outpatient right now. If they deem something is necessary for inpatient, they've told me that they do have the resources if they need to make phone calls and things to get people inpatient, but it's all outpatient. The parent or guardian commitment is 1 session a week. And the parent has to be, that's where I said they have to be on board, because one, they have to get the juvenile to the facility, and second, they want them as an active participant, because they want to work with the whole family to get everybody on board to find out what's going on and what we can do to help everybody out. And then they also have multiple therapists and social workers on staff, including staff with the ability to conduct trauma and risk assessments. And I add that in there, so if we have a youth who's in the program and maybe they're acting out for one reason and it comes out that they were sexually molested when they were a child or something of that nature, they have staff that can immediately sit down with them, assess them, talk with them, and get them the services that they would need to hopefully help them with that problem, which will then in turn help the other problem. That is all I have for juvenile diversion, short and sweet, but that pretty much covers everything that we're doing right now. And at this point, I'd say we've been very successful. And a lot of it does come from the high schools, just because that's where most of our stuff happens. But on the night shifts, I get phone calls as well when they're out with different juveniles that are having issues. So it's a successful program so far, and I hope we keep going in a positive direction.
Thank you, Sergeant. Just real quick, and then we'll open up to questions that the board may have. I failed to point out at the beginning that the diversion program was part of the strategic plan on the police side. Goal number 4, strategy 4.1.1. The Deputy Director will talk about, but it's establish a process to identify and target at-risk youth for potential intervention and development. So this coincides with the strategic plan, and it was important to us as an agency to try to meet that community need and try to find alternative solutions to some of the problems we're facing within our community. Where do we go from here? Again, this is a 1-year pilot program, so the goal here is to administer this program for 1 year, collect as much data as we can, and again, that falls on Sergeant Schulman. He's got a big data spreadsheet going. And then at the completion of that year, we'll come back to the board with the results and seek a recommendation from the board, whether this is a program we want to permanently implement within Canton Township, or whether it's something we want to address through the court, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'll turn it over. I don't know if Deputy Director Baugh has any comments. This was really, this was his idea, his vision, and a shared vision, but we put this together, and I think Deputy Director Baugh did the heavy lifting on this with his team.
I can speak a little bit about why this happens. We ask constantly, when we manage a police department, you ask why are we doing what we're doing? So that's how we found ourselves in this position, because we're looking at a staff of 18 command officers that are looking at us we're sending every child through the court system. What can we do differently? Back 24 years ago, there was discretion that was offered, but we have to be conscious about disparate treatment, so every child has the same opportunity. So if we're hoping through this pilot program and the tracking mechanisms that we have in place, the oversight that we have in place, and our ability to train our officers to follow the law, it's not perfect because we can't divert some issues at this point. The community, the laws don't allow for it. But we can divert a lot of things. And this program, on its face at this point, allows us those opportunities. It's logical, it's reasonable, and I think we have a good product to start off with, and it's a great opportunity to move forward with. So with that, if you have any questions.
Michael?
Yeah, I have a question. So can you talk a little bit about the oversight you had talked about? I know school districts, if they're going to be suspending, expelling students, they tend to have to track a lot of that number, specifically around race or ethnicity, looking at making sure they're not disproportionately, just making sure that there's like some objectivity there. So what is the oversight for this program? You talk about a board that will meet within 6 months, but are there any state or federal standards for
So
reviewing these programs?
With our policy, we have an oversight board that the director will assign or request at least 3 participants to be on that board to provide oversight to track the program. Daily, every juvenile that comes in contact with our organization is tracked. So we can show why or why not that person was allowed the opportunity to participate in the program. Not just those that are participating, we can go back and show everyone we came in contact with that with a criminal offense, why or why not they were allowed into the program, so we can show if there's disparate or non-disparate treatment. So that's important for our tracking mechanism. I'm not certain what the school district's doing with internally, but it's been, from my understanding, some great workmanship with you in the school district at this point. I'm not certain if there's been any friction at this point, but I think they've been encouraged by what we've been doing so far.
Yes, the school district has been very happy with the program because it gives us and them another option to help a youth take a different path. If they continue to vape, if they continue to be disruptive, instead of writing disorderly tickets, instead of writing them the vape tickets and just continuously putting them in the court system, this gives us another option. I haven't had any pushback from the school.
Right.
I think the path that we're headed, where we're causing some type of conflict, I would imagine for a school administrator, do I report this to the police? Because I know where it's headed if we do it. So with this program, at least we have an opportunity for some diversion.
Yeah, two things to add to that. Recently, as part of this, we looked at 10 years' worth of data. And what we found when we did that is I couldn't, and my team couldn't quantify some of the data from 10 years ago because just the pure way that we were writing police reports, the pure way that we were collecting data. And so the reason we went through and we used 3 years' worth of data to present to the board tonight is because we can quantify that. We can stand behind that. And that's part of the accreditation process and the CLIA and all the things that we've, the CompStat model, all the things that we're doing now is we're very specific on the data. So when Sergeant Schumann gets these reports up, if it's missing those components, those reports are going back down to the patrol to make sure that those data key points that we want to collect are in those reports for that reason, so that when we get to the end of this or we need to look back in time, we can pull that data and we can track it. As far as the school district goes, I think that we've, over the last year and a half, we've made some great strides with the district and trying to work through some of these issues with our SROs and being able to be a resource that the district can call on and utilize. And I think we have a really good relationship with the school district at this point.
Yeah. So my initial kind of comment was more about selecting which students would qualify or which kids would qualify versus which ones wouldn't. Because I saw the criteria, there were some objective criteria there, which I liked. There was also some subjective criteria as well, who their friends are, things like that. As somebody who is a former adjudicated youth in the community, I can tell you, given the fact that I was on the wrestling team, I did relatively okay in school. My parents were on like the Chamber of Commerce board. I was able to hide in plain sight because people were like, oh, he looks like, law enforcement was like, oh, look, he's got a side part, he's a nice kid, he's working really hard, let's give him a shot. So to me, I worry about, I just know I tend to trust people that like have the same values as me, look like me, talk like me, that implicit bias. So I just wanted, anytime I see subjective criteria, I get nervous when we're deciding who who qualifies, who doesn't qualify. And how do we determine that everybody who should qualify does qualify? That's the only thing that,
I don't know if this brings any resolution to your concern, but everyone starts in the category of diversion. And we try to keep them in that category unless we can anymore. So, and what I've seen with the sergeant so far, he's found ways even where maybe it's marginal, he puts them in a diversion program to start off with.
Right.
So, I don't know if that's helpful.
yeah. Okay, that's good. And I wanted to predicate that anything prior to this program, the only other alternative was the court system. So,
Right.
no, I'm excited. I mean, you've got
Yeah.
adolescent kids whose brains aren't fully developed, right? They are out there, and we've tried the zero tolerance policy.
Yeah.
Still waiting for that to scare everybody straight. It didn't in the 70s, it didn't in the 80s, it didn't in the 90s, it didn't in the 2000s. We're almost out of the 2010s, and still haven't scared anybody straight yet. So I like that we are trying something different.
Yeah, and I think as long as it's not one of those hard, fast indicators that would preclude somebody, felony crime, the things that the sergeant mentioned, we're going to give the juvenile offender every opportunity to be a part of the program. I know that there's a lot of oversight. I know that Deputy Director Baugh, we had a conversation earlier in the week. We got officers, this is new to them, and so in some cases, they forget or it doesn't come to mind when they're out there dealing with a certain situation. And so that's where the oversight from a command perspective comes into place. If we see a report that comes up and this juvenile offender was issued a citation versus given the opportunity for diversion, we're going to look at that and we're going to try to correct those situations. So again, I think it's, we've trained our officers and we're continuing to hit roll call shifts and bring this up and talk about it. And again, my team is doing a fantastic job every day of really trying to push this because it is new. It's something that our officers have never had in the past. It's not a tool that we've had in the toolbox to be able to use.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I like that, I'm in the process of applying for a visa to Australia, and I have not been involved in the criminal justice system in over 15 years, but I could not go through the fast-track visa application because of my past. And so I had to pull a Michigan State Police report, and it's like, oh, wow, that's something I did when I was a minor, and it's still with me, and now I got to wait an extra 3 weeks to find out if I can go to Australia, if they're going to let me in or not. And you're like, wow, maybe that's relevant. Maybe it's not if it's vaping. That might be something that, yeah.
A key component to this, when you're involved in our diversion program, because of law, I wouldn't have thought of this myself, but once that child reaches the 17 or 18 in the future, we're required by law to remove that record 28 days after that birthday. So it won't exist
Okay.
by law, so.
And the one thing we do, just to speak to your statistics, everything is tracked on 2 spreadsheets that I have access to, the whole command staff has access to, and our crime analyst. Like I said, she's very helpful in all of this. And it actually, I don't know how she does it, but there's a formula she's put on the one column that factors in age every day. So every day it changes, so we keep up on that, and then once they hit that age of 17 and the 28 days come in, that's when we'll talk to the records department to take care of the reports.
Go ahead, Anne Marie.
Thanks. Thank you very much for this. This is a good program. As Michael said, zero tolerance just warehouses our children and throws them away. And this is a way that we make sure that doesn't happen, so we can build a better community that way. So thank you for doing this. I know that years ago, the school board was working on the pipeline to prison for especially African-American males. And so I know, that seemed to take a slow road for a while, but have you ever thought, I think it'd be a good idea to get together maybe with the school board. And I know some of the principals are trying their own diversion programs, but instead of having like little pockets of this, it seems like it'd be a good idea to meet with the school board and maybe all the principals and come up with a good policy and process, because they're tracking data also along those lines.
I know the director's working with the MOU with the school, the superintendent. That's number one.
Number two, I believe they can bring a lot to our program, stuff we haven't even thought of. And it would be nice, as the major school district that we're dealing with, is that, I believe it's their plan book or their guidebook, should mirror essentially what we're doing
Right.
within our policies and procedures here. So there's a lot to learn from them because they've been doing this for a long time.
Okay,
So-
good. Yeah, good, that'd be a great idea. I have some questions about this. So I'd like to see that growth work is not only substance abuse, but if you have somebody who comes in like for non-substance abuse issue, would they have to still take both programs, the substance abuse and the,
No, what they do is they will, once they set contact growth works, they do an assessment. So at that point, they'll run through their assessment and they'll determine what services best fit the juvenile. So if it's somebody that's just acting out and disorderly conduct type thing, and they don't have a substance abuse, then they would go to the life skills program.
okay, now the grants, I think GrowthWorks got a grant for this, correct? Or are we also, it seems like there'd be a large grant for something like this, even if we're saying we'll supply them data to help them.
Right now, it's zero cost to our township.
Okay.
It's a state grant right now that I know that's supporting this effort.
What is nice too, when the sergeant talks about the parent being involved, not that this occurs all the time, but there could be other issues in that family home. And just by location, there's a diversity of services there that wouldn't necessarily be involved in GrowthWorks, and now they're networking there in that same building out in Cherry Hill Village, and they're able to provide other services to the family too, just so you know.
So a lot has recently happened, as we know, over this summer with some items that have been in the paper about our township and the youth that was, had charges pressed against him. I'm just wondering, how is the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office working with you guys on this program?
By that same act, we've talked to Mr. Heimbach about this, the prosecutor. We have to provide him, and then the sergeant's doing it every month with that sheet essentially is what he's sending him, that we have this program. There's not much oversight from their standpoint. They're very trusting in what we're doing. These are low-level offenses in their world. They're dealing with diversion programs themselves, as you know, with higher-level offenses.
Okay. There's just one other thing here. Oh, so in terms of like the vaping, they've got some great commercials on right now. You know, we're talking about Vaping 101, you know, using some of those commercials where they're showing how these kids are really dying from this now.
Yeah.
Losing lungs, I mean, just quickly. But this numbers on this sheet, they're hard to see, but you had tracked this since 9/1/19. And it looks like, I mean, you have the diversion for male and not qualified, and then diversion for female not qualified. There's a high number of females not qualified for the diversion program. That's I mean, 2 to 12, that's pretty high. Is there a reason why so many females aren't qualified? Are they committing that many felonies, or would you guys happen to know?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I would have to look at each report specifically.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I was just looking at, it only showed like 2 went into the diversion program, but 11 were not qualified, and that's a short amount of time. That's a lot.
Irresponsible assumption of mine, it would be it's domestic related.
Yes.
Yes, from looking at this spreadsheet here, most of them appear to be domestic violence, prior arrest, victim refused, what is that? Prior arrest, domestic violence. Yeah, mostly the majority of it is domestic violence.
So that means fights at home, or,
Yes.
so that's alarming. That's maybe a number that we could look at something else for along those
As an
lines.
organization, we're looking at how we respond to and prosecute domestics in the home when they're non-intimate partner, when they're siblings, when there's uncles, and that uncle and uncle, brother on brother, sister and sister. We're looking at what we can do with the prosecutor's office and still be compliant with the statute.
Okay, so the prosecutor, you're working with the office right now?
Yeah, and I think that, to piggyback on that, the other advantage of the data that we're collecting is that if we're seeing a trend like this, where our juvenile offenders are young females and it's a domestic violence and we can't offer that, this is stuff that once this data is collected in the pilot program and we have that, it's something that we can go back and have a conversation with the Wayne County prosecutor to say, okay, here's a problem we're having in our community. We have young females that are being involved in domestic violence. And we've identified that through our diversion program as a problem. How can we work with the prosecutor's office now to start addressing those and be compliant with the statute and everything else? And so, that's a hope of ours and a goal of ours, is to be able to, better address, right now, we can only address so much, but if these type of things are leading us to believe there's other problems, we can work with the prosecutor's office to try to address those in other ways.
As we show program success, I believe it wouldn't be such a heavy lift to say, hey, prosecutor, can we move these into our own diversion program? I can't state that they'll say yes or consent to it, but it's
Thank
an
you.
option.
That's a good idea. Another number that I just saw showed a lot of the, you had some people drop out. So what happens to the dropouts and the no-shows when they agree to a program, but then they don't show?
The way that would work is, actually, I'll just start from the beginning. So if we come across a juvenile that we can divert to the program, they fill out a sheet that we put a synopsis on there as to what happened. There's a statement at the top that the juvenile understands and agrees to, and the parent also signs this, that if they do not complete the program successfully, then the juvenile justice process will start from the beginning. So we enter them into the program. If they happen to not complete the program for whatever reason it may be, they just are no-call, no-shows, or they commit another offense while in the program type thing, then I get contacted. I communicate weekly with the two coordinators at GrowthWorks, check in to see how everything's going, and they will tell me that John Smith is a no-call, no-show for 3 weeks. We needed to remove him from the program, or that his family decided not to do it. So at that point, a report gets written with the reason by me on that case as to why they're removed from the program, and then that gets assigned to the original officer in charge of it, be it a detective, be it the patrol officer. Then they'll either go cite the juvenile for it if it's a citation, like a vape or something like that, or possession of marijuana, or they'll submit what's called a JCO1, which is a petition to the juvenile prosecutor's office. It's just a different verbiage for a warrant request. It's the same thing for adults.
To qualify that too, the prosecutor made the request that all that information of the attempt is included in the discovery packet, so they know that we tried this too. So,
Yes.
So have you had circumstances where you put the kid in the program, and the kid is participating, doing everything properly, and the family doesn't support,
Yes.
and that leaves the kid hanging?
Yes.
Tragic.
Yes.
So they won't take that into consideration, that the kid's working and,
I would assume that Wayne County prosecutor will.
Wayne County prosecutor, I think, will. But the way that the program is written and the way the policy is written and the way that we handle it, the parent has to be involved. That's even out of that act, too, that they have to be involved.
How many children? One? Where's the parent?
saying.
I think there is, let's see. There were two that declined services. One was right on the onset. They said, nope, we're just not doing it. And then one was during the process. They had been in a couple weeks, and the mom just decided that this was not for her son, didn't want him to do it, and chose to remove him and go. And they chose to go the other route, which is the court system.
You might want to consider this as a board too. The child could be facing a $50 citation or driving their kid 3 times a week to GrowthWorks.
Right.
So,
They're writing the check
Right.
instead of doing the work.
Do you, I assume then you follow up, if they're a no-show, do you or somebody call them before you?
So what the process is with GrowthWorks is they give them many chances before they call them a no-call, no-show. So if they, let's say the juvenile got today diverted in the program tonight by our night shift. Technically, the next business day, which is tomorrow, they would have to contact GrowthWorks. If they don't, GrowthWorks is given a copy of the form that they complete, so they will get that emailed to them the next day. So they have the phone number, the parent's name, the juvenile's name. They will reach out to them. They'll reach out to them multiple times to try to get them into the program. And then at that point, if they are no-call, no-show after multiple attempts, then they're removed from the program. It's kind of the same thing if something comes up during the program. If there's certain hardships with families and illness in the family, if you have to go out of town, things of that nature. That's all taken into account. I understand that life happens, life keeps going. It doesn't just stop because you're in the juvenile diversion program. So we take those into account. And if they miss a week, they have to make it up. The responsibility is on the parent and the youth. And part of this, I think, too, is teaching the juvenile to take responsibility for their actions and teach them to be responsible for what they need to do to make things right.
Okay, thank you.
I think this sounds like a great program. I'm excited to see that we're bringing it to Canton Township, so thank you for all of your work and putting it together. I just have a few questions. First, can you talk a little bit about the training, how we train the officers to talk about the program or to offer the program?
Firsthand, Sergeant Schulman went to each officer and explained the program and the goals and the mission of the organization, how we're trying to be in line with what the community wants. Number two, that we're doing it legally, and this is how we're going to do it. We had to explain where the origins came from too, and I'll let him explain his training, but it's not the most complex training in the world, but the goals were explained, and the mission of the organization, and the change in philosophy of the organization was explained, and I'll let you go through the process.
Yeah, it's a very, very simplistic process, like Deputy Director said. I have met with every roll call that we have, and I have met with every special unit that we have, and even our task force officers that are stationed at different places with the federal system downtown and whatnot. I've met with everybody and all of command to discuss this with everybody, to explain to them, like Deputy Director said, the expectations of the program, expectations of the organization, expectations of the community, because I think that this hasn't been offered before, so let's get it out there. Let's try to help people. Who knows? We could be that fork in the road for them that turns them the right way.
And the command staff, we discussed at length, some of the white papers written on restorative justice and the goals of the township and how we're going to accomplish it through the follow-up of our command. Because what happens, we train them once, it's the daily interactions between our command staff and our officers to remind them, because their day is very diverse. Juvenile, you saw there's very few arrests. Mm-hmm. When our organization is making over 4,000 arrests a year, and I think we're looking at 600 over 3 years, it's not a high number to consider a diversion program. So it's the daily follow-up. We don't get too deep in the dissertations written about restorative justice because our people are practitioners. They're just trying to get from point A to point B. But we explain why we're headed where we're going.
Okay. I keep going, in my mind, I keep going back to the kids from Washtenaw County or from outside of Wayne County that are ineligible for the program and thinking about, we have the park and the 3 SROs at the park, but a number of the kids at the park live in Washtenaw County. And I'm just wondering if there's any grant funding or any way to work with Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, or if they have a similar program to GrowthWorks where we can divert those kids into a similar program.
I haven't answered that question.
Okay.
I never considered it until it was brought up recently, and I haven't followed up with Washtenaw County. Something to consider.
Okay. And then this conversation has sparked a question for me about our vaping ordinance. I know that it's been in place for a while, and I'm wondering, how many, I know we have the numbers in here, but how many of those are repeat cases where kids have been caught vaping multiple times? Do we have that information?
I do not have that in front of me, but to speak to that too, since the program wasn't in place before when they were vaping multiple times, I take that into consideration, and I always offer the help. Let's offer the guidance and see if we can help them out, because they've never had the opportunity. So I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can get those,
Okay.
I think that's something we can,
but I don't have those.
we can pull together for the board. It's probably something we should check with the district on too, because there was in the very beginning when our ordinance went into effect, there was a grace period at the schools where there wasn't a law enforcement intervention, so to speak. It was school consequences as they slowly transitioned into it. And now, even at the middle school level, they're handling it the same way that the high schools are, that there's school consequences, and then there's a call to the SROs to address it. And before September 1st, this was a citation, go to court, pay the fine, et cetera. So now we have some ability to hopefully get these people on the right track and understand how dangerous vaping actually is, so.
Please.
I just wonder, what type of record is kept, or is there a file kept on when an incident occurs? Are they photographed, fingerprinted, anything like that, background of the individual juvenile?
There's no photographs, they're not booked or anything, or put through any process like that, like photograph or fingerprinted. Obviously, we have the written report that the officers write, and then on top of that, we've got the 2 spreadsheets go in that are updated daily for the most part, as to, it tracks the last name, first name, sex, race, age, date of birth, the incident number, the charge, the description of it, the report date, their address. If they get in the program by a program manager override, if I overrode a decision previously, the date they were entered in the program, the date they were removed from the program, the date they successfully completed it. So we have spreadsheets tracking all of that.
When we look for disqualifiers, we use our internal records management system, which is connected to Columbus, which is essentially connected to any different databases throughout the state.
Plus, their records automatically expunged?
Right.
Any-
That record, so they're never convicted of anything.
Yeah.
So through this program, that's why they're immediately in the services. You could go through the court system and essentially receive the same treatment, but it may take a few months. This, you do it on Friday, you start Monday. The record is deleted after 28 days from their post-17th birthday, so.
Sorry. So there was, I believe initially in the vaping ordinance, we had put into it a community service component that we had to remove. Is it, was there any discussion, or is it possible to make it a part of the diversion program, a community service component? Because I liked that idea.
Yeah.
In general, I think, I like kids doing community service in general, but.
Yeah, so the community service component that was placed in there, yeah, Craig can probably speak to the exact language, but it was problematic for the court because the court can't, the way that the way that the language was written, the court couldn't really enforce it because they couldn't assign them to do that specific. It was very specific community service, and and the court had some concerns with it. So what I would suggest, or what I would propose, is that you know, as we go through this year process of diversion, we get that data, and that could be one of the recommendations back to the board, is if this is something that the board wishes to continue doing after a year, we can incorporate diversion right into our ordinance and various different parts of it, whether it's vaping, smoking, or other areas of the ordinance, and to include those various components, whether it's community service of some sort, along with whatever is assigned from GrowthWorks. But I don't know if you want to add anything to the specific language.
No, that's exactly why they struck it down, because it wasn't broad enough. It was just too specific, and they couldn't really do much with it, so that's why they decided to remove it.
But the Right Track program that Wayne County has does include community service.
I think the ordinance didn't state a private entity.
Yes.
So it was causing, there's a conflict there with a private entity receiving a benefit from a community service.
It required him to do, under the original smoking and ordinance, and then when we added vaping, it required an offender to do community service at a hospice or nursing facility, and those are private entities. So for the court to require an offender to do something at a private entity is really not in the court's purview, so that's why that was removed from the ordinance.
I like the idea, though, of making them confront their own mortality through their community service. Though.
Yeah.
Was that interesting?
Oh, through a nursing home, maybe?
Well, you know, you're vaping, you're acting like you're going to live forever. There's no consequences.
Yeah, I know that St. Joe's has a very good program. It's called Vaping 101. It's put on by St. Joe's Mercy Hospital. They put it on at all of the high schools. As a matter of fact, there's one tonight in Dearborn, at Dearborn High. It deals with that. It talks about what is vaping. It talks about how our youth are getting involved in vaping, and then it goes into the ill effects, and it's very descriptive as to what this can do, what vaping can do to your body, and the concerns that we really don't know at this point. But obviously, with all the news media and the things we're seeing, collapsed lungs, people going into respiratory arrest as a result of vaping, I think the ill effects are far yet known, and we will know in 10 years what this actually does to people.
Thanks for doing this and being transparent about all the data.
Excellent.
It's important.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Betcha. Looking forward to the year-end statistics.
All right, Sergeant, I'll let you get out of here. I appreciate your efforts tonight.
Thank you,
And,
sir.
You passed your opportunity. We'll go ahead and transition into the strategic planning update portion of our presentation tonight. And so as 2019 comes to a close, we wanted to provide the board with an update on our 5-year strategic plan and the progress of our goals. And that's really, I passed out a document. This is our report card. I'll walk through that in just a brief second. But, I need to point out that I'm incredibly proud of the work my team has done over the course of 11 months to accomplish some great results, some of which we're going to talk about tonight and cover in detail. But just the day-to-day work that our police and our fire and our ordinance departments are doing is, I'm impressed every day by the work that they're doing. But most importantly, I continue to be very proud of the work my team, or our team as a township, both internal and external. And what I mean by that is the support we had from the board, the team that's here tonight, Barb Crusoe, Denise, our external stakeholders that came in to help us establish this 5-year strategic plan. I'm incredibly proud of the work they did because it's going to lead to the success of not only our community, but the success of our department. And 2019, we submitted this 5-year plan after it was approved to the board. We submitted this plan to CLIA, the accrediting agency for our police department. After the assessor reviewed the 5-year plan, his comment back in all capital letters was, and I quote, "Impressive multi-year plan, one of the best I've ever seen." So I take great pride in this because this was a homegrown plan. I went to my team at the end of 2017, and I said, we need to do a new strategic plan. I said, we have the option, we can contract this out, we can hire a consulting firm to do this for us, or we can take this on ourselves. And the team before you tonight, without hesitation, said, we're doing this ourselves. We own this. This is our department. Nobody knows this department better than we do. Nobody knows this community better than we do. And frankly, they took great pride in our organization. And so to hear CALIA come back with that comment, impressive multi-year plan, one of the best we've ever seen, and know that this team before you tonight put this plan together, the plan that's before you. I can't tell you how proud I am of this team and how proud I am of the work that they do every day. And again, it's the deputy directors, the deputy chiefs, Barb and Denise, that put this together and really, quite frankly, hit this out of the park as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's going to lend to the success over the next 5 years. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to walk you through each area of the department. And what I passed out before you is really the 3 sections of the strategic plan, and this covers our goal. And this is the report card. This is the report card for Canton Public Safety. And so when we made this document, we had our goals, we had our objectives, and we had our strategies. And each one of those goals, objectives, and strategies has been assigned to somebody within the department. They're responsible for it. They own it. And they're responsible for making the mark on the report card. And so what Denise and Barb created was this document that you have before you tonight. And when you see this tonight, what you see is a description of the goals, of the objectives, the timelines, the status, and complete. The performance indicators, this is a fillable PDF form is essentially what it is. And the performance indicators are filled by those responsible for these goals. And so each quarter, they're responsible for reporting back to me where they're at with their goals. What are they doing? What's the status of it? Is it complete? If it's not complete, where are we at? Why are we not? And so it's a trackable document that holds us as an agency accountable for meeting the goals of this organization and the goals established for us by this township board. So I won't go into great detail and steal the thunder from my colleagues, but I do want to talk about some notable accomplishments that we had in 2019. So on the police side, we established a public safety aide position to augment department staffing and assist with jail duties and front desk. As the board knows, this was historically a responsibility of our public safety service officers, and they have an incredibly tough job. They have to, they're in there answering all the 911 calls. Every non-emergent call that comes into this police department goes through that dispatch center. All the radio traffic, all the traffic stops, that's all handled by our public safety service officers. And then on top of that, they were responsible for processing every prisoner that came into our jail. They were responsible for monitoring the care of those prisoners. So we were able to get into the strategic plan and approved by the board, hire 6 part-time positions, public safety aid positions that now augment our PSSOs. They're non-union part-time employees that are monitoring our prisoners, monitoring our jail duties, doing processing when they're there, and assisting our front desk officer with the management of front desk duties. Several years ago, we had to eliminate, due to concessions, we had to eliminate our special services lieutenant position. I'm proud to say that one of the components of our strategic plan was to bring that position back, and this year we reinstated the special services lieutenant position. Although we had to eliminate a sergeant position in our investigative bureau to do that, we felt at this point in time that position was critically important to our organization because as Deputy Director Baugh will talk about in a few minutes, the Special Services Lieutenant is responsible for all of our recruitment, retention, training programs. You name it, there's a lot that goes into that. And so when you talk about, and Deputy Director Baugh will hit on it, the newness of a lot of our officers, training has become critically important, and we need to hit that. And so while we're going to miss that sergeant position in our investigative bureau and we'll have to manage, this was important to our organization currently. We incorporated a special operations group that Deputy Director Baugh talked about. This group is part of our investigative bureau, and they focus specifically on Canton problems, Canton-related crime, Canton-related concerns. And that team has been tremendously successful this year in some of the results that they're producing. And again, that's the direct result of the leadership and the willingness to think outside the box and come up with solutions to our problems. We established the diversion program that we just talked about, the pilot program, and again, I'm incredibly excited to see what the results of that were. This year, all of our police officers were trained and began carrying Narcan to aid in overdoses, so that's a huge step forward. I can't tell you how many times it's been administered, but it's been quite frequently, and there's no doubt that that has saved lives. On the fire department side, we broke ground. We broke ground on fire station number 2, so that was a huge accomplishment. That's been a 5-year kind of thing that we've been looking at doing. We needed to do. We know it was a community need, and so we finally broke ground on that, and we're going forward. 2 gentlemen next to me completed a ton of work on accreditation, and we're going to have the department's first on-site assessment next week. That's something I started as fire chief in 2013, and we've been working at it ever since, and it's a huge accomplishment for this organization, this department. Presently, there's only 270 accredited fire departments in the world, and only 3 in Michigan. Canton aims to be the 4th in the first quarter of 2020, and that's because of the work of Deputy Director Stockline and Deputy Chief Strasner. They've done a tremendous job with that. We completed replacement of the department's aging fire apparatus. So 3, we got all those in service. We've equipped them, and so that's a huge asset to the township. Began receiving federal SAFER grant funds to fund 6 firefighter positions. Again, the work of the fire department. 2 Canton firefighters were deployed out of state with Michigan Task Force 1 to assist in FEMA hurricane relief efforts this year. Again, a tremendous pat on the back for those firefighters and the amount of training that they received and their willingness to go outside of the state to help others in need, I think is a testament to the firefighters working in this community. On the PSD side, one thing that I'm very passionate about and very proud about is we're able to reduce our opioid overdoses by over 10% within this community in 2019 so far, and that's a direct result of the partnerships we've established with GrowthWorks, St. Mary's, Families Against Narcotics, and the Conference of Western Wayne. We've established a program that now gets people into treatment. We give them an opportunity to get better. The Narcan, all the things we've done to try to address the opioid epidemic and crisis in our community, I think is paying off, and we're seeing those results. And then finally, we established an internal committee to develop a health and wellness program for the Public Safety Department that will not only focus on the employees' physical well-being, but also their mental well-being, including critical incident stress debriefing. Our police officers and firefighters are seeing things that I don't know that the human eye was ever intended to see or process. And that weighs on them both mentally and physically. And so it was very important to me to have resources available to our first responders to be able to address things like post-traumatic stress disorder, address things that they were seeing, take care of themselves so that they can be good, long-standing employees here for the police and fire department. And so my team will talk a little bit about that, but we utilized our peer support team this summer when we had a drowning victim, a young drowning victim, and it proved to be incredibly successful for our police officers and firefighters that had to respond to that incident to be able to talk to their peers and utilize some of the training that we brought into the police and fire department to address it. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Director Stockline, who's going to walk you through the goals and where their status at is on the fire department.
One question before we jump off is the rescue recovery funding. When do you see that drying up?
Well, that's a great question because we're still working with our legislators. So as the board knows, that funding, we were awarded a $500,000 line item within the state budget to fund that program. Unfortunately, with the governor's vetoes, that was cut out of the funding for the state of Michigan. We're working, Conference of Western Wayne, working with our legislators to reinstate that. But we do have some light at the end of the tunnel. There's about $240,000 of the $500,000 that was allocated last year that went unspent. And so what Jordan with the Conference of Western Wayne is doing and St. Mary's is doing is working with our legislators to be able to allow us to continue using those funds to continue to support that program until we can find an alternate means. My hope is that funding never dries up until we don't have another overdose in the township of Canton, because it's a critically important program to helping those in need.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you. So like the director said, we've got a lot of great things going on in the fire department, a lot of accomplishments over the last year. And, he's kept saying that the deputy chief and myself were responsible for a lot of that, but we couldn't do that stuff without your support, because a lot of this stuff is capital improvement stuff and items that we have to pay for that you guys have to approve. So thank you for that. We really couldn't move forward with accreditation or any of that stuff without your support. But getting into the goals, if you have your strategic plan in front of you, I'm not going to go through every single one of them. We're just going to tap on a few of them that are important right now. Some of them haven't been touched this year just because of the overload on the department with the accreditation and everything else, and you'll see that in our report card there. But starting out with the first goal with the staffing levels, we'll continue to monitor that staffing levels. Although we're unable to make a staffing analysis at this point, and give that to you strictly because we're not up at full staffing yet. So we've basically been about 3 years without full staffing. So we're still 2 firefighters short on that, and we're still continuing to work to get those firefighters hired. So it's really not fair to give you a staffing analysis without being at the full staffing that we're budgeted for. So once that's complete, we'll move forward with that staffing analysis and get that to you. But we continue to monitor the SAFER grants and the things that we put in for before. I think our last check that we received from SAFER was upwards of $80,000 in reimbursements. So we'll continue to collect those quarterly now that we have those 6 SAFER firefighters hired into the department. And we'll continue to seek other alternate funding. We did apply for CPR, automatic CPR machines or systems. We were denied that through the AFG grant system this year. So we'll have to move that back into the budget. Of course, I'm going to apply again next year for that. We were successful in receiving a radio grant just last few weeks, $40,000 in a regional grant with Dearborn Heights. So successful on that, getting some extra prep radios and mobile radios that we need in our vehicles. On the recruitment and retention side of things, we continue to visit the colleges, visit the schools, visit the paramedic classes, and get our name out there, try and get that recruiting in. We've run into a few things. We've had some dialogue with other departments, and really, we can't explain why people would leave Canton Township. We're biased towards Canton Township, right? But when we see firefighters leaving Canton or police officers leaving Canton, we're trying to dig down and figure out what's going on with it. And at this point, The only thing that we ever hear from them is either it's a location thing or it's a benefit thing, a benefit package thing. So at this point, we haven't really analyzed it enough to give you a true answer on the exact reasons of why firefighters would leave. But we'll continue to work on that as we move forward and get these other firefighters hired in. So as far as goal 3, you can see fleet apparatus and station 2. We've been moving forward with the fleet apparatus. This year, we purchased a vehicle for our battalion chiefs, replaced a 97 vehicle, I believe it was. So quite an aging vehicle there, and got that replaced with a new battalion chief vehicle. Our next vehicle replacement is scheduled for 2021, and you'll see on your sheet there that we have an engine and a squad that's up for that. So those are the big ticket items. We also have a utility truck and a inspector's vehicle that are due up for replacement in 21. So large ticket items in 21 are coming. Next year, we really don't have anything to be replaced. We're fortunate enough to receive the 2 engines in the last year, and we know that that was very helpful in helping our response times and our fleet maintenance. So we'll continue to work with fleet maintenance on that stuff and continue to update this as needed. And with working with finance, make sure that this is still a good goal for the budgeted items in those budgeted years. So continue to look at that stuff. So our cadet program, I kind of skipped over that on the recruitment and retention. We haven't had much movement on that, but I just wanted to touch on that real quick. We're working on that in negotiations currently, and if we can get some contract language in there, we're going to really try to get into the high schools and bring that recruitment in. We've got some systems set up with Schoolcraft that they're willing to set up that cadet program and pay for the firefighter 1 and 2 through the high school while they're still in high school. So a couple of little contract language things that we need to clean up, and we'll get them back in here. So one of the other things, moving back to goal 3, is the Station 2 update. So we've basically finished the planning of that. They've demoed the building, so the demo's completed on that. We are waiting on Eagle, or Eagle, however you want to pronounce it. They are wanting to review the 10-year and 50-year floodplain, which is not common. So there was already a hydraulic analysis done, so we're kind of waiting on Eagle to get that back, or us get some stuff from the engineers over to Eagle. They're going to review it. Once that's approved, then we'll be able to start the construction. In the meantime, they're cutting trees, getting ready for foundation. We can still work on the foundation at this time, so that's moving forward, and thank you to that, because I know it's been a long time coming. I think it's probably been 7 or 8 years that we've been working on this project, so finally seeing some movement, and it feels good, right? So Station 4, the Deputy Chief is going to talk a little bit about our technology and our tracking of data, and he'll speak to the fact of response times in that area. So we'll continue to update you on that as we go, but I think that Fire Station 2, getting that completed first is probably our main goal, and then we can discuss that kind of stuff later. But it's all listed in the strategic plan here. And the capital improvement project that we've been doing, working with finance and as well as building maintenance, and I think that we have that hammered out pretty well. So I'm pretty sure you guys have probably already seen that, the capital improvement project. But here nor there, a lot of updates have been done this year. We replaced the carpet. We finally got the floors finished in Station 1 that we came to you with. The carpet through Station 1, Station 3, lots of improvements in the stations, capital stuff that's been pushed off for many years. So Station 1, hopefully you guys can get over there soon. It's looking really good. The floor turned out wonderful, and we finally got a good product over there. So the only thing that we really had to push off is we had $60,000 budgeted for furnaces at Station 1 this year, and we weren't able to get that completed. So we'll probably be moving that forward to next year. So moving on to goal 3. Goal 4. I'll let the Deputy Chief talk about it.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So for goal 4 is ensuring core programs meet service delivery demands. And one of the key objectives or initiatives that we really, that came out of this goal was the residential inspection program. And this is a real important thing for us because it's really a two-faceted approach that really hits an accreditation model, and that is community risk reduction and just general public education. It's a great program, but it's so new that not many people know about it yet. What we've tried to do, though, is really push it through social media. We tried WDIV. We just did a recent spot. I don't know if you guys were able to see that or not, but we had an inspector go through and do a home inspection at someone's home. And we mention it every chance we can, whether it's at any community event that we have. I'm always telling people about it. But the interesting thing about it is just not many people are interested in having us come out just yet. But I feel like the more people talk about it and the more that they realize that we're not there to tell them their home's unsafe, although we would if we saw something, we're really there just to educate and help them, make sure that they're, living as safe as possible as they can. So it's an important program for us. In 2018, we only did 18 of them, which doesn't really sound that exciting. But in 2019, we did 36 so far. So there's a marked increase. And every year, if we keep on increasing it, it's going to be just as popular as our car seat safety check initiative or any of the other smoke detector rollouts that we do. So it's really important. We're glad it's moving in the right direction. And the accreditation team, when they come next week, they're definitely going to want to see, what that process looks like. And what all it is an NFPA checklist that the inspector will go through someone's home with and just be sure that, hey, are your doorways, open? Are your smoke detectors current? Is there anything unsafe going on in the home? Is there blocked staircases? That kind of stuff. So it's nothing, bad or anything like that. It's a good program. Following up on Goal 4 is the accreditation. And wow, we talk about accreditation a lot, right? It's a good thing. Sometimes when I start talking about it, though, I let the deputy directors yank my shirt so I can stop a little bit because I don't want to get off into a tangent. But there's 3 components to this thing that we're working on that I've been answering questions to since September 1st. The first one is our strategic plan. The second one is our standard of cover. And that basically is, I've showed you guys some of that stuff throughout the years here where, we've looked at each zone that we have and we've identified a risk and we're trying to figure out, how long it takes us to do something in each one of those zones. That's one of the main components of that document. And then finally, there's a self-assessment manual that really ties all these things together. And it's about a 600-page document that has been poured over several times. And right now, it's currently being evaluated by a team of 4 individuals. They're going to come here next week and validate and verify the things that we wrote. So far, they've looked at it and said, okay, Jamie, this looks good. Now we're going to come and be sure that what you say you do, because that's really what it's all about. As far as our strategic plan, though, and talking about how we establish a list of changes and improvements made through this model, I know the difference that I've seen in the agency since we've started doing the accreditation process, because it really is a process. A lot of times people get the misconception that this is just one of these things that we're just going to do and then stick it away somewhere and we'll pull it back out when we got to look at it. And having a meeting like this really speaks to how we're following that model of continuous improvement. I mean, holding ourselves accountable. Every year writing an appraisal about certain programs that we're doing. Is this program working? Is this residential inspection program working, right? Is it making a difference in the community? Well, it's a little early yet to make that determination, but we're still writing that appraisal to be sure that it is happening. Okay, so those are some of the small things that we can see as changes that we've seen in the agency. The recommendations, that's really going to come from the team after they're here next week and they make their determination on whether or not we can make it to the next step. And then there'll be a ton more recommendations and a lot more work. So it's a great process that I feel like, well, it really holds our feet to the fire and makes sure that, like I said earlier, that we're verifying what we say we do, right? It's very important. All right, so enough of that. You didn't even have to pull my shirt. All right, so goal 5. Analyze and modify and dispatch model to meet current and future service delivery requirements. The first one I'll touch on is the alerting system. And the real key here is, again, throughout the years I've come to you guys and we've talked about different ways we're getting mapping in the vehicles. And we finally have a solution to this, and it's this alerting system that's noted in here. It's called BRYX is the system, BRYX. And it's got several different components to it, but the first one is it's a paging system that as soon as dispatch hits a button in dispatch, it sends the message right to their phone. It also sends it directly to a computer in the truck, and it has mapping available to them instantly when they get in the truck. So that's key, just in, again, going back to goal 4, because we're always trying to improve on our response time. And the best way that we can do that is our reaction time. So as soon as the tone goes off in the fire station, firefighter hears tone, gets in truck, begins going. That time, that distance between the tone going off and them getting in the truck is our reaction. We want to shrink that down as much as possible. And we think we finally found the solution. It's still early in its infancy stages, and it's not even fully implemented yet, but so far the application itself, we've seen a slight reduction in reaction time, so we're very proud of that. One other component of this alerting system is it has a heart smart tone. So right now, if you go over to the fire station and they press the button for the tone, it just immediately starts at whatever volume they have it set at, making whatever tone it sounds. It can be jolting. There's tons of studies out there that talk about how this will increase chances of heart attack, and it's just bad for people to be scared and jolted like that. So this is a ramped up tone, and it's supposed to ease them into movement, and it's supposed to be very good for them. So that hits on a health and wellness initiative, which is also part of the accreditation model. Next up is the GIS enhancements, and this is another one that we probably wouldn't be doing so much of if we weren't going through the accreditation model, I'd have to say. But as I talked about earlier in our standard of cover, we have the township mapped out for all 36 zones. We have a building footprint of every building that's here, and we have a pre-fire survey program that is built off of that GIS enhancement. So that allows our firefighters to go out into the community and go to these buildings that maybe we haven't been in as much as we'd like to, and be able to take pictures of key things like where the alarm panels are, Knox box location. We just want to be sure that we have all the updated information that we need, and also that our crews maybe have walked the building, so in case there's ever an incident there, they're ready. It's kind of a nice pre-plan. So that is the GIS enhancement in a nutshell. But I know that the next version of accreditation, we've already talked with them about what's coming, and it's really, GIS is just exploding right now, as I know the supervisor's fully aware of, as he helped us get a lot of that building footprint done. Maybe it was last year, I think. It's all a blur now, but it's last year. And the next version of accreditation is really going to hit heavy on these GIS enhancements, because it is so much data out there, especially with the census coming. It's just going to be huge. So that's it for my goal 5.
So one more thing, just to touch on goal 6, and just to backtrack on that accreditation stuff. We met with the shifts last week. Jamie and I went down to the shift, and we spoke with every shift. And through the process of the last 5 years, right, there wasn't a whole lot of buy-in of accreditation. For them, it doesn't really matter, right? They're thinking, well, it's a sticker on a truck. It really, the buy-in was not all there, right? And I think that when we were down there this past week, we truly had buy-in for the first time as we went through these things, and they could see over the last 5 years the improvements, like the deputy chief was saying, that we've made, right? And having this brick system and having all these GIS and the mapping in the trucks and all the stuff that make them better. And we explained that through this process is how these improvements came about. So that was positive for both of us to see last week. And it should be positive for the entire community to know that the firefighters are buying into that as well. But getting into goal 6 here, just a quick touch on that. With the accreditation process, as you said, health and wellness are going to be a huge issue in the future. They're going to hit us on this for sure when they come in, and I know this will be one of their big things. NFPA and OSHA require these standards of physicals for the firefighters, fit tests for their masks, all these things that go along with it. There's cancer presumption, there's all these things that go into the contract side of things, and this is one big thing that we can help do. It's mandatory as well, and it's coming down the pipeline, but help to offset costs in the future for the organization. If we can catch these illnesses early, and then one of the examples is the fire department at the airport. They run these physicals every single year. It caught a cancer on one of the firefighters very, very early and was able to cure this firefighter and get him back to work. Saved a ton of work, workers' comp issues and things down the road. But this stuff is coming. We're working with, I've had conversations with HR and the labor attorneys. We were talking about negotiating it into the contract. At this point, they believe that we can just mandate this. So we're going to move forward in that direction. But we will have some follow-up conversation. We've had conversations with the unions, but we're evaluating the financial impact of it and everything else. And we'll bring that back to you once we get some final answers on that and move forward with this. But like I said, big thing with accreditation, and I'm sure that we'll have some recommendations from them when it comes through. So that does it for the fire department.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions?
Just one, on the last goal, you talked about meeting the health. You talked about how he found cancer, but how would you evaluate, how are they currently evaluating mental health issues?
As far as how are we currently?
Right.
We don't have a program in place to evaluate mental health other than when they come through the door. So when they originally get hired, they go through a mental screening, and that's pretty much it, unless we have another issue along the line, right? So there's not really a mental screening, and that's what the director was talking about, was setting up our mental health teams to have those evaluations and have those people available to talk to, right? You know, we've had a couple employees that we've had to send out for psychological evaluations, right? And they're now returned to work. So HR does a great job of dealing with that and making sure that we're following the guidelines for the state and the requirements for that, following the labor laws. But as far as an actual program that we can send them to, you know, we have the EAP through the township, and we have several programs through Peer Fitness and the IFF as well.
Okay. Are there certain levels, so I'm assuming in the future that would mean that if there's a certain level of a tragedy happening that you would have to respond to, that it would be an automatic that you would speak to somebody? Is that?
So that's part of the goal that we're working on, and it's really primarily the peer support team. So we have a little over 20 firefighters and police officers that have been through the training. And so they're able to provide that peer support. Then we also have chaplains associated with that. And so when the policy gets rolled out, it'll be incumbent upon our command when we have an incident that would need a critical incident stress debrief, that we activate that team, we bring those employees in, and we have a critical incident stress. The incidents that the deputy director is talking about are primarily PTSD type incidents where an employee has witnessed or been a part of a traumatic event that's caused some concerns, and so we have to work to treat that through the workman's comp program. What we hope to do is provide early recognition so that we don't have people, so to speak, John Wayning it any longer. We recognize that something's going on early. We get them the help, whether that's through the peer support team or whether that's through clinician type programs, but that we're addressing it early rather than waiting until it becomes a full-blown PTSD situation.
Would the fire person have to request that service, or is it something that a supervisor would say, you've been through this traumatic experience, you should probably enter this program? Because I know a lot of times when people have PTSD, they don't automatically recognize the symptoms right away.
Sure. So when we had the incident over the summer, I talked with both deputy directors, and we decided that we were going to, right now the program is voluntary. It's difficult for us to force somebody in to that type of treatment unless it's a fit-for-duty type evaluation. So we would have, there's certain parameters that we have to witness in order to be able to put somebody in through for a fitness for duty. So the peer support program, the critical incident stress debrief, is a voluntary program. And so when we had the incident over the summer, we had, I think, we had 4 police officers and 5 fire personnel. Does that sound?
Sounds correct.
Yeah, so we had about 4 police officers that were actively involved in a run and 5 fire personnel that are actively involved in a run and 2 of our dispatchers. We scheduled a PTSD session the following morning at 7 a.m. and we had 100% participation from every first responder that was involved in the incident. And the feedback that we got from them after the fact is that it was very beneficial to participate in that and be able to have somebody to talk to and walk through that together, because they were all on that run. They all experienced it. They all saw what they saw, and for them to be able to do it together and talk about it and work through that proved to be very beneficial. And so that's something we're going to continue to do as we identify those incidents, whether it's a death or whether it's just any type of traumatic incident that we feel would cause those type of concerns for our employees, to be able to address it early.
But also to build on that, yes, we have 100% sent for fitness for duty right after we've witnessed something. So we do take that into account. We will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions? Thank you. Well done, guys.
With that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Director Baugh and Deputy Chief Wilshire for an overview of the police department.
Thank you. With the goal updates with the police department, like I said earlier with the diversion program, we constantly ask why are we doing what we're doing. With our workforce plan, we look at historical information and current information when we deploy our resources. We're always looking to improve our response times, and what that really means also is deploying resources to meet the service levels of the community, not only just getting to your house to answer that call and write a report. It's to close that loop and to actually bring some type of positive outcome. And in the past, not all the time, I don't think we had the investigative element to close the loop properly. And now what you're going to see with some of the things we bring forth today, I think in the last few years, and specifically in the last 20 months, we've really put forth a great program. Our staffing analysis, much like the fire department, we're down at, I believe, 6 at this point. It would be irresponsible to come forth with a request to improve or take away our staffing level because we haven't met what you've allocated to this point. When it comes to best practices of our organization, we always look at it from how our employees are going to put out the service. So our service has to be legal. It has to be what the community wants. And we do it through holding our employees accountable, too. It's not just a responsive agency. It's an agency that's proactive. And we make sure our employees are prepared to be proactive and responsive through legal training. To go back a little bit with the investigative element, so with this SOG team, this surveillance team, it replaces essentially what used to be Western Wayne criminal investigations. That doesn't exist anymore. In the last 20 months, we've overshadowed anything I've seen in my 24 years for a local municipality to be able to produce like we've produced. Our access to our relationships with Homeland Security, FBI, Border Patrol, ATF, the DEA, that have immediate access to 85 people as a force multiplier is incredible. Just recently with the ATM case, I've talked to you about it here about a month ago, we have access to a helicopter. We're running surveillance with a helicopter from Homeland Security. There's no Western Wayne community that's going to have access to a helicopter that quickly. When we talk about increasing the department staffing levels as a goal number 2, as an annual examination, and we have to be fiscally responsible, right? And also, we'll look at our skill set. We have 55% of our organization that are under 5 years of service. So what we did, we moved one of the investigative supervisors into a special services lieutenant position, not the person, but the position, and we're able to bring some oversight for ordinance, internal affairs, moving internal affairs away from the shift commander allows that shift commander to be on the street more and not focused on internal affairs issues. We take every citizen complaint into our organization and investigate it thoroughly. To do that properly, that shift supervisor is in that building. He's not outside with those officers with less than 5 years supervising. So we bring that component into the special services lieutenant position. And also the training components, he's responsible for that and the recruiting of the organization. Also, you'll see in the coming years, in the next 9 months, there's only 2 of us left with more than 10 years of command experience. So that's something to consider as a board. There's only Craig and I, that's it. In the police command, we've only been command officers for 10 years or more. So we have to be real attentive to training, legal training, and oversight with our people. We preach oversight and accreditation. And what that really means is make sure we're prepared to make the right decisions at the right time. When we deploy resources, we have to understand the concepts of the organization as omnipresence. We want to create a feeling out there for if a bad guy comes to town, they see a police car. Hopefully they will. So we displace, disrupt, dismantle. Dismantles and investigations on occasion. Displacing crime to another community is the best thing we can do besides disrupt it. We'd rather it not occur. So when we go out and we talk to people and they say, we're not going to come to Canton because Canton has police everywhere. We have to do that by putting our people in the right spots. So Ford and Hagerty, Ford and Canton Center, Michigan Hagerty, Michigan Belleville. That's all their choke points in the township. It's not rocket science. But we take that 30% of our discretionary time, and that's where our people should be, while also answering all the issues at the school and all the other issues with your community concerns. If it's speeding on your local street, we have those issues to deal with too. So back to goal number 2, the PSA program. What that does with our organization is we brought these people into our organization. They're able to offset some of the responsibilities of those dispatchers. We talked about taking all the 911 calls, all the administrative calls, the calls from the citizens community, and focus our dispatchers on those issues and train our PSAs to be focused on the prisoners. With over 4,000 prisoners coming through our building, there's a high risk there. And being able to just put our people in a dispatch center to answer calls and have these other individuals resolve the prisoner issues is been a force multiplier for us because we have more attentive dispatchers to the issues coming in through the phone lines. So we talked about diversion, we talked about the special operations group, and also another best practice is what I would call it, is we put forth, so for 30 years we've had a SWAT team. We also execute search warrants without SWAT teams because it's not appropriate, it's not the right thing to do. But we have to train individuals within our organization that are fresh and ready to go. So when you execute a search warrant in an occupied dwelling, it's critical. Bad things can happen. You don't want tired individuals who've been working a case all day long to execute that search warrant. We bring in fresh people to execute some of these search warrants when the risk protocol deems necessary. So it's a risk management component that we brought in a few years ago, and it's really kicked off pretty well in the last year. So that's some of the things that we've done to mitigate risk.
Yeah, one of the components to that search warrant team and to the SOT team has been a great cooperation between the police and fire departments. And so historically, when our search warrant team, our SOT or SWAT team would go out, it was police officers. Now we have firefighter paramedics embedded on those teams so that if our search warrant team is executing a search warrant and something goes wrong, we have paramedics, fully trained advanced life support paramedics there to render care to whether it's one of our officers or whether it's a civilian or whether it's a suspect, immediately render that care. So it's been a great cooperation between police and fire to make that happen. And they train together, they work together, they talk, and it's been a great partnership.
And when we talk about opportunities in Canton, that's what sets us apart when it comes to recruiting and retention. We can offer a new employee and current employees, obviously, opportunities to work within our organization in special assignments and with federal agencies. Currently, we have at least 10 officers that are federally sworn to do different things for Canton Township. And that sets us apart from another community. Maybe it has something they prefer maybe through a compensation, but we can offer them the opportunity to participate as a task force officer at the DEA, the IRS, the Secret Service, Homeland Security, the FBI. There's things that we can do internally. And we have to balance that, too, with the needs of day-to-day operations when it goes back to goal number 1, about deploying our resources properly. Technology, the Deputy Chief is going to address that through the goals, but that also, we're trying to find ways to offset some of the span of control issues with technology. As we talk about inexperience, it's important to understand we have to have proper level of supervision for the new officers, and in the future, how's technology, how can we utilize technology to offset some of those concerns? If you would.
Good evening, everyone. So as we work through our goals, we always try to look at each goal and how it's going to enhance the service to the community. So that's truly what we look for in setting these goals, and then how we're going to accomplish each of these goals. So looking at the first, now it's the third goal, the first goal I'm speaking of is enhancing police partnerships. And this is not only through the enhancements in technology within the police community, but also partnerships that we have with, again, as we spoke about, the federal agencies that helped us out in many different circumstances. So one of the things we see is a rise in crimes that are related to digital forensics. One of the things we did to try to enhance that and service the community better is through alternative funding sources. We actually purchased a new forensics machine and trained multiple detectives to be able to operate that machine, because they're so connected and they help us to solve those crimes and, again, displace, dismantle, and disrupt are key components. Along with that are the many other high-level trainings for them to, again, as crimes get more advanced and harder to solve, we have to obviously train our officers up in order to service the community properly and be able to solve those crimes with the resources we have. We also have our crime analyst, who is fantastic with partnering with other agencies, speaking to other, because again, crimes don't just occur in Canton, they occur everywhere. Suspects are suspects in other jurisdictions. So by sending out bulletins and communicating with other jurisdictions as far as how their crimes and their crime series are, we can prepare ourselves for crime series that may come to Canton and prepare ourselves and get us in the right position to combat those. Another way to enhance partnerships is through Goal 4, is actually enhancing our community engagement. Through our community engagement efforts, we've had about 180 community events. 30 of those have been through our community engagement team. That's 3 times what it was last year. So they're out in the community participating at events with multiple different groups, causes, and things of that nature. Other people who enhance our community engagement are our emergency manager. He works with the community to establish emergency operations plans for churches and mosques and things of that nature within our community. And then Patty Esselink, our community relations officer, she's in the community every day and engaging in different aspects. So that helps us. We continue to explore. We have the Canton's Response to Hate Crime Coalition. Again, in the name there has the name Response. We want to make it more proactive. So now we're working to rebrand the actual coalition and to be more proactive and get out in the community and utilize our community engagement team and then our partners within the community to engage the community and be more inclusive within our community. So that's one of the things. And as we talk about community engagement, we actually use it for Goal 5. Goal 5 is our recruitment and retention, which we've talked a little bit about. We actually, during these community events, we actually speak with community members and try to recruit them into the agency, try to get and diversify our workforce through these communications and through these partnerships and interactions we have with them. We continue to struggle, as all law enforcement agencies do. Currently, we do have open positions. We actually have offers for each one of those positions under Goal 5, Recruitment and Retention. However, I know that we are currently in competition with other agencies for the same exact candidates. They're in background investigations with the Canton Police Department and other police departments right now. So again, now it comes up to them, who are they going to choose at the end of the actual background process, giving us that. We continue to enhance our recruitment process through sending, Lieutenant Kennedy's created a great program where he actually sends officers all over the state to every single academy within the state to again, engage candidates from all over the state. And that's actually paid dividends. We've had multiple candidates from all over the state come to Canton, and their exact words were, the only reason I know where Canton is because your recruiter came to our academy. I had no clue where Canton was, and I would have never applied here if it wasn't for your recruiter. So that's under Goal 5 is the recruitment and retention. Some of these candidates are, again, as the Deputy Director identified, is the opportunities that draw them there and the technology that we have under Goal 6. So evidence-based technology. So Goal 6 is what we look towards, is to try to improve our service to the community by engaging and implementing technologies that, some agencies don't have. Currently, we just had a grant to purchase the TrueNarc system, which is a handheld narcotics analysis tool, which is going to take our officers and go to the road, and it's going to increase their capabilities while increasing their safety. Because you can actually analyze a substance, an unknown substance, through its packaging. You do not have to take it out and touch it, which has become an officer safety issue with fentanyl and things of that nature. So this allows them to actually analyze the product through their packaging and makes them much safer to do that. Some of the other things we've done as far as technology is we've actually looked into researching the implementation of rapid DNA within Canton. That's still an ongoing process, and that'll give us the capabilities to be much more efficient in solving some of our crimes. Currently, the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, they have a 6-month wait on DNA. The Michigan State Police has a little bit longer, and they've actually changed their protocols, and they're not accepting as much as they would in the past. So they're not even accepting some property crimes, which, again, leaves us no option outside of maybe Oakland County, which is 6 months. So waiting 6 months, I don't think that's acceptable from our standpoint. And if we can improve that through rapid DNA, we will do our best to do that. We continue to research the options or the opportunities for citizens to submit video voluntarily to us to help us solve crime. So having an opportunity that they can submit, there are computer programs and things of that nature that we are researching that can give us that opportunity for if a citizen has a video that they would like to share with the police department that would help us solve a crime like a package theft or something of that nature, they should be able to do that. Other things we're doing in order to improve our technology is body cameras. Body cameras, we've had the battery life on our current body cameras is not acceptable because we're not getting everything we need to do to be documented. So we've gone through the RFP process. We've whittled it down to 4. We did 4 interviews with 4 body camera companies, and currently we're going to conduct some tests and evaluations with a few of those companies in order to determine and eventually bring a recommendation to the board as far as what product's going to be best to serve the community. So as we walk through our goals, we'll always continue to improve our technology in all facets of the organization to improve our service levels, and this requires some infrastructure approvals. So under Goal 7, maintaining service levels through maintenance and acquisition of physical resources. Some of this falls under the CIP, and then also this helps us maintain CLIA accreditation. So looking at the back parking lot and the dispatch center, those are 2 things. As technology grows, so does the burden on the dispatch center. We outgrew the dispatch center many years ago, so we need to improve that so that we can actually add these enhancements that we're talking about. So video systems and things like that, more video monitors and higher or more technology in the dispatch center is a requirement, and it's going to require us to grow. As far as our parking lot, that's part of an issue that's been addressed or identified through CLIA that we need to secure the back parking lot, because in the back parking lot is our communications to the township. And if that is compromised, then obviously we're going to have service level issues that we don't want to encounter. So we're going to continue those. And again, these things and maintaining these at the dispatch center and the rear parking lot are things that are going to help us maintain our CLIA accreditation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the director.
Are there any questions, comments? Anne Marie?
Sorry, you talk about recruitment. Do you ever look at military recruitment, people coming out of the service? I mean, is that one of the items you look at to bring people in, or no?
I think we could expand recruitment to military folks as soon as we're prepared to pay for the academy. That's going to be the change agent. Right now, we're not paying for the academy for people from the outside of the organization.
Okay, so you wouldn't consider recruitment?
Oh, we would consider it. We just have to be prepared as a township to pay for it.
So if like somebody were to be an MP or something, that wouldn't be the same training?
There's an abbreviated academy. We actually hired somebody that went through that before, and they're working somewhere else now. But that we've went through that process before, and it is out there, but it doesn't happen a lot for us.
Oh.
But we didn't pay for it either. They paid for it themselves.
Okay. And you said something about rapid DNA in Oakland County. We don't have something like that in Wayne County?
No one in the state of Michigan has it currently. Right now, there needs to be some change in legislation, and we're looking at putting forth some information to the director right now to maybe kind of go through you folks to help us out with that. State lab is reluctant at this point, and so is Oakland County. We have to, it's kind of complicated, so just imagine a database with everybody's DNA in there. You have to make a copy of it, put it over here, have a machine that compares that data. That's not acceptable right now. So we're waiting for the FBI to say that's approved. There's rumor that could be approved in the first quarter of 2020, and that's when the ball will start rolling. Right now, the state lab in Oakland County are saying that's years away, so we don't know who's telling the truth.
So everything that you do has to go through Oakland County then?
No, we choose which lab to use. Right now, we've constantly used MSP for DNA evidence. Our friends in Livonia help us out with fingerprint DNA, or fingerprint analysis to get quick turnarounds, and also the state police. We're gonna start looking at Oakland County now. They can help us just to get quicker turnaround. We've even considered driving some stuff down to Philadelphia just to get a quick turnaround, because we want to solve these crimes. When you see the larceny crimes go up, we might have to drive it. It might be worth the day drive, because this rapid DNA can turn this stuff around within 90 minutes. So,
Okay. Well, thanks.
I noticed for goal 5, under performance indicators, that position was blank. Is that a result of, do we have no performance indicators to judge? Or are we waiting for the staffing study on that, or?
let's see where we're at here.
So are you, which strategy? So the hiring, training, retaining of employees?
Yeah, both of those strategies there, 511
Yep.
and 512. I just didn't see anything under the column performance indicators or status.
Yeah, so that's kind of the work in progress that we talk about. We're doing some deputy directors. So in terms of recruitment and retention, it's kind of a multifaceted. So when we look at hiring, one of the things we did is we went out to some of the academies and we had conversation with the recruits. What are you looking for in an agency? What are you looking for in a department? Because it's hard for us to market our department if we don't know what the recruit today is looking for in an agency. So that was kind of step one. Step two in that process is now starting to evaluate some of the reasons that our employees have left, and I don't always get that information, so we requested that through HR, who does the exit interviews. And so it's blank right now because it's a work in progress that we're working to do a complete analysis of, and so that we can bring some recommendations back to the board in terms of how we can maybe better that approach. Hope that answers the
Sure.
question.
Go ahead, Summer.
As you're looking at updated technologies like the rapid DNA, and I know some other communities are looking at things like facial recognition software and things like that, I always wonder about accuracy and how you balance the accuracy versus getting information quickly. So can you talk?
Anything that we would do with identifying what would be ultimately a defendant, it would have to be approved by the FBI. It'd have to be approved by the state of Michigan and through all the protocols there. I know Craig may have had a little experience with facial recognition. Right now, we're not in that arena at this point. And that's a community decision that I'm sure the director would bring forth to you folks to consider. But the accuracy would always be, go through a certain oversight and approvals that would either be through the FBI or through the state of Michigan.
Michael?
I have a question. We talked about federal partnerships. Do we work at all with the ICE or with Immigration Services? And do we participate in potentially the any administrative warrants that they would serve? I see in the newspaper some Metro Detroit or Southeast Michigan communities. I've seen some stuff with that. I haven't seen anything in Canton, so I was just curious.
Well, you do know the Homeland Security is seated in our building. They're in the police department. They're attached to ICE, essentially. But their focus is money laundering and fraud. They do not actively seek out people that are here illegally. We do have a member of our agency assigned to them, and the only time that they've went out was on a consortium group that was human trafficking. That was a Southeast Michigan task force that was put together for a one-day event where people were being human trafficked to work in different locations in Southeast Michigan.
Okay.
So active investigations, never at this point.
The large laundering case that we talked about, was a partnership with Homeland Security that we were involved in, or
There's
was that
been a
in-house?
few. There's one that's taken us all over the world, right? And that's cryptocurrency. There's been at least 2 or 3 other 7-figure cases that has to do with social engineering, identity theft, and that type of stuff.
Oh.
So that has to do with cell phones, all the different commodities today that people are most interested in is stealing people's identities through that mechanism. And it's an answer for the township. We never had an answer for identity theft at a national level. Like,
Yeah.
when someone comes to report, hey, my identity was stolen in Kansas, we'd write it down and say, sorry. And now, sometimes we do have an answer to that. So.
Yeah, we do. I was just wondering, with the increase in the senior citizens and getting these phone calls and scams, does the group here work with that in terms of?
You know what? Very rarely do we, if there's been no action taken by the victim, there's not much follow-up done, because there's not much information to start with. But sometimes when there's a victim that actually falls for it, this is where the rubber meets the road, and we've been successful in that regard, is finding the actual perpetrator, because the action's taking place, they're on video, there's actual evidence of it, besides the one phone number, you know.
Okay, thanks.
No further questions, comments? Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, thank
We
you.
have another section.
Yep,
Josh?
I'm going to roll through this in the interest of time real quick. There's 11 common goals that have crossover in both police, fire, ordinance, go organizational wide, so those fall into the public safety section. I'm only going to touch on 4 goals tonight, but again, if there's questions that the board has about goals that we didn't cover or information that we didn't cover, you're more than welcome to send me an email and I'll get you the answers that you're looking for. So goal number 1 is analyze and modify our dispatch model to meet current and future service delivery requirements. That's really touched on a little bit by Deputy Chief Wilshire, and that's taking a look at our facility, our room. What do we need to add to accommodate new technology? The ability to get videos into that room so that our dispatchers can give real-time information out to our police and fire when they're responding on calls. We also look at identifying some of the strengths and the weaknesses in the room. We implemented a new incident command system on the fire department side. Historically, our PSSOs, our dispatchers, weren't trained at the level of incident command that our fire and police officers were. They had a very basic component. Now we incorporate them right into that training. And so we do actual run-throughs. So if the biggest one would be a structure fire type incident, our dispatchers, our PSSOs play a critical role in that, in the successful outcome of a structure fire. So now, not only are our firefighters training on that, we get our dispatchers, we get a radio talk group, and they're actually dispatching and talking over the radio as if it was a true live incident. So that's become very, very important for our PSSOs to be a part of that, so that they get to understand what's occurring out on the street, and our street folks get to understand what's occurring in that room and that partnership and working together. Goal number 2 is enhance programs to address immediate and long-term mental health and physical health, and we talked about that. So that's really something that I'm passionate about, and that's making sure that our team members in public safety, our police officers, our firefighters, our PSSOs, our ordinance and support staff have the resources that they need to maintain healthy lifestyles and address incidents and circumstances that come up through the course of their duties. And so we're about 50% complete. We've got some policies drafted, we've got some training in place, and we have a few more steps to go, but I think we're making some great progress there. Goal number 3, improve communication, organizational culture. So when we look at our community and the diversity within our community, and we look at our workforce, we want to make sure that our department and our organization is reflective of the community that we serve. And so we have some work to do in diversifying our workforce, and that's something that we're assigning to our recruitment and retention teams. And we're getting out there and we're trying to address that the best that we can and try to recruit and retain a diverse workforce for the Public Safety Department. Obviously, there's training, annual ongoing training and diversity that we, fair and partial policing, implicit bias training for our police officers. We do that for our firefighters as well. Our community engagement team is very active in our community and getting out there and speaking with people. And then we bring our police officers and firefighters, and they're able to actually sometimes bring that training back and train the shifts and impart some wisdom upon their peers. So that's been successful. As my colleagues talked about the community engagement team, that was something that we established this year. Really kind of started last year, but really full swing this year. And the idea behind that was we need to be out in our community. The first time that a resident sees a police officer or firefighter shouldn't be on their day of need. It should be prior to that. They need to understand what services we provide our community. They need to be able to put a face. They need to be able to rely on those services. And so that's the job of our community engagement team. And that's really getting out and engaging our community. It became very critical in the drafting of this policy because really I can sit here and I can tell the board, hey, we're the best department there is. We do all these great things, but really what it comes down to and what the meat and potatoes are is what do our residents think? What do the people we serve think? What do they want out of their public safety department? And so the way that we hit the benchmark is by finding out how we can best serve our community and best serve the board, and that's kind of the goal here. Enhanced school safety and security, again, another goal that I'm very passionate about. You know, as I think everybody knows, I've got 2 kids attending public schools here in Canton, and so every morning I watch them off to school. I worry about their safety, and I worry about the safety of all the kids in our school. And so what we want to do is we want to be a good partner with Plymouth Canton Community Schools, with our charter schools, with our nursery and daycare schools, to be able to provide a resource to them, both police and fire, that they can rely on, that they can count on. Again, not at their day of need, but prior to their day of need. So what we're doing is we're getting into the schools. We're doing active shooter training. We're talking about it. We're getting involved with the schools. We're giving them resources that they can use. We're working with the high school to do safety and security assessments. It's a large campus. It's huge. Over 6,500 students there a day. That's a huge concern of mine. And so how do we work with our district? How do we work with the director of school safety and security to make sure that we're putting programs in place, that we're working at not only training teachers, training staff, training students on what to do in an active shooter, how are we preventing those incidents from occurring? And so that's something that we're passionate about. We're continuing to work on and continuing to build those relationships. And I see those being ongoing efforts throughout this 5-year plan. With that, I will hold off on going through any more of our report card. But again, please take some time to look at it. If you have questions, if you have concerns, don't hesitate to email me. We'd be happy to answer any questions. We really wanted to hit on some of the high points tonight in respect for the time because it is a pretty comprehensive plan. And with that, you know, I do appreciate the board's support and the community support that we continuously get for our public safety department. So thank you.
Do we do
Questions?
questions from the audience at all? Or?
Are there any questions? Hi. Yeah, sure, go ahead. Well, this is related to Josh's presentation or just in general?
This is actually related to the Juvenile Diversion Program.
Okay, so let's finish. Just stay there because we're going to be 2 seconds. No, you're a good place. Mr. Walker's no longer with the district?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there intention to replace or backfill?
Yep, the applications are out. As a matter of fact, I was going to sit on the panel to interview, but I got accreditation, so Deputy Director Baugh is going to sit in my place next week on that interview process with the district to pick a new director of safety and security for the
Is
the
there
schools.
anybody that's in that role as in an interim basis? Does Kurt take that over, or how does that work?
Kurt Kiskowitz has fulfilled some of those duties, and some of the other duties, I believe, have been turned over to the security management position. So I don't think anything is at a standstill at the district, but it will be nice to get that void filled and be able to have a name and a person that we can directly contact with, because I know Kurt's, I talked to him just the other day, and he's extremely busy with taking on dual roles, so.
Any additional questions on Josh's portion of the, okay. Yep, please.
My name is Rob Brandon, 6738 Burnham Drive. I was really like the juvenile diversion program. My dad was a police officer in Detroit in the 80s and the 90s. He worked out of the youth bureau out of the 8th precinct and retired out of the 6th precinct in Detroit. He always talked about a program like this. I actually remember when Act 13 was passed because he was working in the juvenile division, and he was working with Inspector Wilson back then, talking about a similar program, a way that they could keep individuals out of the court system. However, my personal concern is that I always believe that there are some personal biases, and I know that we do training with the officers about bias training and things like that. But for me, I just want to make sure that there's equity and due diligence of the police officers, that they are equally looking at each person, not based upon personal biases or biases towards any member of any protected class. So I just wanted to say that and have it out in the record that it is very important that if we proceed with this program, that the program has safeguards in place to make sure that it is not based on being a certain type of individual. As Mr. Seacrest was saying, you know, a white guy, good parenting, or perception of good parenting or something like that would get more due diligence performed in making sure that they went through the program. I know that Director Meyer had stated that the command is also looking at citations that are issued to kind of put that safeguard in place, but I want to make sure that it's a consensus and it's not based on one police officer's ideas of whether that person should be in the program or not.
We totally agree from the police department perspective. We're very concerned about disparate treatment as a police force throughout the United States. And I'm fortunate, and I know Craig is too, that we've seen a big change in the culture of policing. And I think you'd be proud to see how our staff operate today in the field. So, but to your point, we're going to be, there's a lot of eyes on this, so it should work out just fine.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Any additional comment? Seeing no other public. And board comments?
Good presentation.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well done. Tomorrow night's the tree lighting ceremonies up at the summit. Everybody be at dusk, I think, right? Yes. I think that makes sense.
Are any of you on duty that night?
We have planning in place. I will not be there.
It'll be a full house as always.
Chad is always on duty.
I do. They complain about it.
I appreciate Chad's calls and text messages at 3 and 4 and 2, and they're much appreciated.
He said keep him in the loop.
And one final comment before we adjourn is for those that are looking to buy fresh cut Christmas trees, the Kiwanis Club, the newly formed Kiwanis Club of Canton is selling them up at the summit. So if you're looking for a tree, an
How much
opportunity.
are they? What are the price ranges?
It's $50, $70, I'm not sure. It's market-based.
Okay.
Yeah, market-based.
I know, didn't they factor in a $10 profit per tree or something like that I saw?
I don't know what the
So,
final number is,
not
but
too
yeah.
bad. Probably shouldn't be too bad.
Opportunity to buy a tree and, give to a local charity. All right. Could someone please make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys. Well done.